Miss Gregg, is it true that Jim is an acquaintance of yours?
Well, you see, sir, I first met Jim, and he was indeed an acquaintance, but nothing more.
Are you sure, Miss Gregg? You seem to hesitate.
Well, as I continued to get to know Jim, I began to see his humorous personality. However, I felt it wasn't amusing to me. Over time, though, I would witness Jim teasing Paul or mocking Doc Stare, and then a few weeks later he began to ridicule me.
Speaking of which, there were a few incidents that you reported last week. Can you tell me more about them?
Well, the first event occurred when Jim showed up at my doorstep one night. He directly grabbed me, but I was able to escape and phone Joe Barnes, the marshal. However, I never understood why he was at my doorstep, because I knew he was married.
Now, Jim Kendall was married with kids. However, they recently divorced. Anyways, Miss Gregg, what about the second incident?
Doc called me one night asking me to meet him at his office, so of course I gladly accepted. When I showed up at his office, though, Doc was nowhere in sight and the door was locked. That was when Jim and his gang of friends showed up, and I immediately knew this was a joke and took off running. I was extremely embarrassed, and then after that incident, I began to see Jim as someone who was immature and acted out for his pleasure.
Now, please describe your relationship with Paul.
Paul is more than acquaintance only because I would run into him at Doc's office. However, over time, he seemed to become obsessive over me, and he was usually by my side, tagging along with me as I would shop. Most of the time, Paul seemed sweet and harmless, and I always tried my best to make him feel welcome. However, I was full of pity most of the time.
All right. Thank you, Miss Gregg. Now, Dr. Stare, what would you say is your opinion on Mr. Jim Kendall?
I have to say that I hate him.
Whoa there, Dr. Stare. Let's take it back a step. Why would you say that you have such a negative opinion of Mr. Kendall?
Well, why do you think? He harassed Miss Julie Gregg for no reason, and he does nothing but make people feel bad about themselves every day.
Now, how would you say he does this? That is make people feel bad about themselves.
Everything that comes out of his mouth seems to be some kind of insult. I can't tell you the last time I had a decent conversation with a man. Ever since I moved here, I've seen him cause nothing but trouble and hurt for everything and everyone he touches.
Okay then. Now, would you say that this had anything to do with... that you had anything to do with the events that have happened over the past few weeks?
Absolutely not. Although I can't say I'm too sad he's gone.
Now, would you say that you have any sort of bias against Mr. Kendall? You seem awfully negative.
Of course, but anyone would. He definitely deserves anything done to him from anyone after everything he's done to this town.
And you'd be prepared to state everything you've said here in a court of law, even given that this man is dead?
Yes, I would. Frankly, I'd be glad to.
So, Mr. Dixon, what's your relation to Jim Kendall?
Well, I'd have to say I know him from the hair shop.
Now, that's not the only reason you know him, is it?
Well, I guess not. I did go out a hunting with him about a week ago. That's when all this started to happen, I guess.
Yes. Now, can you tell me about the events leading up to that hunting trip?
Well, certainly. I mean, Jim and I were always the best of pals. I mean, he'd always joke with me and everything, but I mean, I'd joke back with him, and it was all fine, of course. I mean, he would always say, Paul is just cuckoo, but I always treated it as a joke, you know? It was a joke. I mean, he never meant nothing by those jokes. I mean, some were worse than others. But, I mean, he always meant good fun with it.
Okay, now what about the incident?
Oh, well, leading up to the incident, I'd have to say things were about the same as they'd always been. I mean, Jim was looking to go out hunting, and I didn't mind going with him. So there we was in the hair shop talking about how he wasn't going to go hunting because Hod wasn't in town. And, you know, I guess I just thought, why don't I go, you know? I mean, I guess I was pretty surprised that Jim would let me go, you know, because even though we were the best of pals, I wouldn't have thought him let me go and hunt with him. But he did, so we ended up going hunting like we had planned, and things just happened.
What do you mean things just happened?
Well, I mean, they just happened. I mean, I'd never shot a gun before and that, so it just played out, I guess.
Now, in your opinion, this was completely accidental, just as you've attested to before this point?
Well, I'd have to say so. I mean, I'd never shot a gun before, and Jim was certainly my good pal. I mean, Jim was always the nicest to everyone, and even though he joked a lot, he never deserved nothing mean. He was always just looking for a good time.
Okay, now you'd stand by this statement that you'd have to say so in a court of law?
Well, I'd say so, yes. I mean, I never would have hurt Jim for no good reason.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dixon.
You and Jim were close friends before the event. Do I have that correct?
Yes, sir. Me and Jim would pull jokes together and such. It was always just in good fun, though. I've been trying my best since it happened, but it just ain't the same without Jim, you know?
Do you have any reason to believe that Jim had any enemies?
Like I said, it was all harmless fun. Everyone knew that.
Like, what do you think? What do you know about Paul Dixon, the boy that was with Jim during the incident?
The cuckoo? I mean, sure, Jim gave him some trouble from time to time, but he wouldn't have done something like this on purpose.
So you believe this was an accident, then?
Yes, sir. Like I was saying, Jim's jokes was all in good fun. There weren't no reason for anyone to kill him over it.
Some people think that Jim and you had gone too far with some of your harmless pranks.
They're just jokes. We weren't hurting nobody.
Did you ever stop to think about your and Jim's actions? How they were affecting people?
Well, no, but
People like you and Jim that do these types of things always suffer some consequence eventually. Do you still think it was an accident?
we were just joking. Jim didn't deserve no consequence. That cuckoo couldn't have done this.